All right, so I'm going to show you exactly how I'm making $2,000 a day right now as a 25-year-old working from home, working roughly 4 to 6 hours a day. So we're going to start over here with sales. What is sales? Why do people get into sales, and sort of what does that journey look like in today's world and climate? So sales is typically something where you're selling something and you get commission for selling that, right? Typically, people are attracted to this space because it offers what we call higher leverage. What does that mean? Basically, what that means is you can make more money in less time, depending on how efficient you are, right? Some people like this because they don't like their amount of money that they make to be connected to the time that they put in, right? In sales, right, you can work much less if you're really good at what you do, and you can make a lot more in less time, aka higher leverage. So typically, when people think about sales, the first thing that comes to their mind is, well, probably a bad taste in their mouth because a lot of people have had bad experiences with sales reps or individuals in person, right? Nobody likes to be called, nobody likes to be sold, obviously. But everybody buys stuff. So start to think about how that works. So in sales, typically what people's brain jumps to is what we call the corporate sales environment, right? Selling things like pest control, car sales, solar, all this, door to door stuff, or these cheesy car salesmen, used car salesmen that just, nobody has fun with. Typically, anyone in these industries, they might be doing okay. I mean, there's usually what we call a Pareto principle, which is where 10, 20% of the people in the industry make all the money and the rest are just kind of hustling just to get by. So these, when we get to corporate sales, we also, we have two buckets. We have our, we've got our in-person sales where we're selling things, car sales, pest control, solar, and then we've got sort of like remote or uh, telesales or computer sales where people are calling and selling things like vacation packages or timeshares or whatever the heck. Typically, regardless of what your corporate sales role is, it's going to be a 9 to 5 job where you are an employee, right? Similar to other types of roles, aka sucked into, falls into a corporate style template or role. What that means is typically you're going to be required to work at least 40 hours a week, regardless of how efficient you are. Typically, you're going to have, be given a salary for that. Okay. So typically, people equate salary with safety. Uh, People are taught to like safety because it keeps them safe. Um, we don't want to dive into something else too much here, but typically, um, if you've ever heard the term risk reward ratio, right? Typically, people that stay safe all the time are going to have a cap on the rewards that they experience in life. What that means is these people are paid a salary to never take any more risks again and stay with the company so long as they get a certain raise every year or two. Okay, so long story short, you're going to be working a 9 to 5. You're going to be working 40 hours a week, making somebody else rich until you're 65, where you might be able to retire with enough money. You'll have a salary. Your income will be capped, regardless of how efficient you are. Even if this is a corporate sales role, typically your commission is still going to be capped just because they have a lot of red tape and bureaucracy surrounding their systems. What this boils down to is lower leverage, right? You're working the same 40 hours regardless of how efficient you are. In a corporate sales role, even if you're the top salesman, usually you're still going to be required to work 40 hours a week. I remember I worked for a logistics company where I was I was calling truckers trying to sell truck routes or something like that. And even if I had made a bunch of money or closed a bunch of deals, I still had to, they literally would track when I left the office, right? If I left a few minutes early, I'd get in trouble. So nobody wants that. At least I don't. I don't like being a slave making somebody else rich. But this is what the corporate role can look like. Okay. So that begs the question, what is the alternative, right? I'm in sales. I'm not doing this. Okay. So this is what the alternative can look like. The alternative is what we call the high ticket sales industry. Okay. So typically the high ticket sales industry is remote and it's 1099. 1099 means you're not necessarily an employee, but you're an independent contractor. So you're being contracted for your services or your skill set, AKA brought in to close deals, for businesses. Okay. Maybe these businesses are in person. Typically they are remote or sold over the computer. This means no 40-hour work weeks. Yay. So what that means is, right, this industry is much more efficient because it's not tied to a bureaucratic sales structure. Okay. So in the high ticket sales industry, typically we're going to be selling what we call online offers, right? So these are going to be things that are sold online, usually through the following online verticals: agencies, what we call biz ops, which are things like helping people start a business, like an e-commerce business or real estate business. Influencers. If you follow anybody on Instagram that has more than 20,000 followers, as I'm sure anyone watching this does, they probably have a sales team, right? They are generating leads, they're making money, they're selling something, unless they're just doing partnerships like selling clothes or something like that as an affiliate. But most of them, especially if they're fitness coaches or dating coaches or something like that, they're going to have a sales team probably, if they're with past a certain revenue point, and they're going to be closing deals remotely. Okay, there are people taking those calls, okay, for them, right? They might have an amazing service. That business owner becomes capped. They need someone to take those sales calls for them. Okay, we also have what's called SaaS, which is software as a service. Okay, so selling softwares, something like what's a software that everyone uses? Like Zoom. Okay, Zoom is a software that people are able to use. Okay, I think it falls within that bucket. Yeah. Anyway, software as a service, and we have coaches and consultants, right? Things like coaches for things like fitness, dating, consultants for business, right? These are all high ticket products that are sold online. Okay. Typically, online offers are going to fall into one of three buckets, as we see here. They're typically going to fall, into health, wealth, or relationships. Okay. These three buckets are typically the buckets that people are going to experience problems in their life. Okay. If you think about any problem in your life, probably falls into one of those three buckets. Either you got something wrong with your health, you're not where you want with your health, got something wrong with your wealth, aka you're not making as much money as you'd like to, or your relationships. Maybe you need to meet someone, maybe your marriage has issues, etc., etc. If all three of those buckets are in a good spot, usually you got a pretty good life. However, if even one of those is out of track, it can have massive impacts on the others, right? For example, if we have poor health and we get sick, our relationship is going to be damaged because we're sick. We can't go out there and meet people, or we can't spend time with our significant other because we're going to the doctor. And if our health is bad, we can't work, we can't make money, right? If we don't have enough wealth, right, we're going to have to work all the time. We're not going to be able to focus on going on dates, meeting people, for relationships. We're also not going to be able to invest in our health. We're not going to be able to see the best doctors. We're not going to be able to pay for a gym membership, right? You can see how all these things are connected. Anyway, all online offers are typically going to fall into one of these buckets and solve a problem in one of these buckets. Okay, so if we talk about health, fitness coaches, wealth, business consultants, or real estate coaches helping people make more money, or relationships, helping people fix their marriage, helping people get better at dating, etc., etc. Three things that humans are interested in: health, wealth, and relationships. So typically, in the online space, there are thousands of offers that fall into these buckets, and they get very, very niche, which is a good thing, because that means that these people selling these products and services can sell them for a higher ticket price. This is why it's called the high ticket sales industry, because the ticket prices of these products and services are generally higher than the everyday consumer would spend just going to the store. Okay. So what we would consider a high ticket product or service, or something that we're selling that is quote unquote high ticket, would usually fall between $3K and $30K for the price of that product or service, or that offer price, as we call it. Okay. So typically we're selling these products and services for anywhere from $3,000 to $30,000. So if you're new to this, that might seem like an outrageous amount that someone would pay over the computer or the phone. I'm here to tell you it's not. I've closed over $3 million in this space over the last 4 or 5 years. There are a lot of people that want to spend a lot of money. They just want, they have to go through the right process, which is another story. But long story short, thousands, if not millions of people paying these prices for products or services that solve problems in one of these three buckets. Thus, the high ticket sales industry. Okay, so how am I actually making, between $1,000 and $2,000 a day right now? So typically in the high ticket sales space, we have business owners, right? That own one of these businesses that fall in one of these verticals. Business opportunities, coaches, agencies, influencers, etc. Like I said, think of the fitness coach that has 50,000 followers on Instagram. Okay. How is he growing his business? How is he making money? Typically, he's booking sales calls. Okay. On these sales calls, some people call them a discovery call or an intro call or an exploration call or implementation call, right? Long story short, these are sales calls. Okay. These are when a person or a interested prospect is jumping on a call to have a conversation to potentially consider buying a product or service that will enhance their life in some way or solve a problem. So typically, the business owner, through one channel or another, whether that's marketing via running ads on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, or DMing people from Instagram, or people just coming straight from YouTube videos, they're booking sales calls, aka inbound leads. These leads are coming to them, right? We also have outbound leads, which is when you reach out, right? But that's a different story. Typically, inbound leads are what are really attractive to people in this space, because what that means is warm leads, aka no cold calling. Okay. So the business owner is using these inbound leads, right, from their audience or from their ads to then book 3 to 7 sales calls a day for each person on their sales team. They usually have a sales team ranging from one person all the way up to, 100 people, depending on how big the business is. Typically, each sales rep, depending on their skill set, is going to be taking anywhere from 3 to 7 calls a day. Okay. These calls are going to be booked directly on their calendar, and they will be taking that call typically over Zoom. Okay. So they'll be meeting someone they've never met before, helping explain a product that they're already familiar with, right? Helping them make the decision to see if that product or service is the right fit for them. If it is, helping them make a decision to take action, move forward. Okay. That is what the sales rep is paid for. Okay. So for example, let's say I work for a business owner, right? He's bringing inbound leads in from one channel or another. They're booking sales calls and he's scheduling them right on my calendar. Okay. I then have 3 to 7 opportunities a day to close a deal. Okay. So let's say each one of those deals falls within this ticket price, $3K to $30K offer price. Every deal I close, industry standard in this space, is about 10% commission of what we sold the offer for. So let's be conservative, and let's say I'm selling a ticket price for $3,000. Okay. Let's say I have 5 calls booked a day for $3,000. Even if I close 1 out of 5 deals, which is 20% in one day, I'm making $300. Okay. So anyway, each deal you close, you're making anywhere from $300 to $3,000. Okay. And this is in one day, right? How do we do that? Once again, business owner is booking 3 to 7 calls on your calendar. You're going to go to your Google Calendar. You're going to click on the meeting that's been booked on there. You're going to join via the Zoom link. You're going to have a conversation. You're going to do a sales pitch. You're going to have a conversation with another human, right? Via sales process, you're going to close 1 to 2 deals a day, ideally, right? Once you get to a good spot as a good sales rep or closer, which will then allow you to make anywhere from $300 to $6,000 USD per day, right? AKA 6K to 50K a month. Let's just process that for a second. 6K to 50K per month, okay? On the upper end of that, that's what surgeons make, okay? That's what surgeons go to school to make for 10 years to make that type of money, right? And they still have to work many hours for that, which is good. Props to them. They're very, very highly skilled, right? But the higher your skill set becomes in the sales industry, in the high ticket sales industry, the closer you're going to get to this higher end number, right? This is, there's people that make this in this space, of course. What does this mean? This means that we have a high leverage opportunity, right? We're making more money in less time. Okay. So, how do I make $2,000 a day? Okay. So, I currently close for a business, right? Right now, I'm currently the top sales rep for arguably the top trading software algorithm in the world right now. Okay. This is a high ticket product and service. I'm not going to disclose who they are or anything, but long story short, I'm selling a product right now that ranges in price anywhere from 10K to 25,000. Okay. Been in the space for a while. I've gotten good, but right now I'm selling a product every day for roughly $17,000 on average, let's say. Usually I have up to 8 calls a day. Okay. So let's say I'm selling a product or service for, let's say I'm selling it for 17,000. Okay. That's typically what I'm selling the product or service for. I've been in sales for a while. I'm good at what I do. I've specialized in this for 3 to 4 years. And typically I'm closing a deal for about $17,000. Okay. So each deal, let's say I have 5 calls a day, right? Typically I'm closing 1 or 2 of those a day. Let's say I close 1. 10% commission equals $1,700 in my pocket. All right. You might be like, yeah, okay. You're like, maybe you could say you can make this. Why aren't you wearing a Rolex? Why aren't you in your G-Wagon right now? But regardless, that's roughly what I'm making every day, right? If all goes well, I'm taking 4 or 5 calls, and I close 1 of them. Okay. Let's say I close 2 deals, right? Now, that is roughly, what's that? 3,400 in a day if I close 2 deals. So that's 10% of 17,000 is $1,700 per deal times 2 equals $3,400. Okay, this is what we call high leverage. All right, so let's take a look at some of the deals I've closed in the last week or 2. Okay, so we're going to come over here to my feed. This is my community where I come in and I show people how to close these types of deals online and get good at it. But so this deal, for example, right? I posted this 4 days ago. Okay, this was a 17K deal that I closed in 45 minutes. Right, I made $1,700. Okay, on that call, I'd never met him before. He didn't know who I was. He knew what company I represented and what product we were going to be talking about, but I had never met him before. Okay, so as you can see here, I contracted $17,000, which means he agreed to pay $17,000 for the product, and he paid half up front, which was $8,500 on that call up front. Okay, never met him before, right? This is the power of sales. This is the power of warm inbound leads. This is the power of selling amazing, incredible products and services in the high ticket space. Let's look at this one, right? $6,000 PIF or pay in full. Okay. Never met this person before. Took a call with them. By the end of the call, they had paid $6,000. Okay. So I made $600 in probably 30 to 40 minutes. All right. This is once again what we call high leverage. Here's another one. 14K deal. I closed on May 8th. So a few weeks ago. It was a pay in full. That person paid the full $14,000 on that call, which means I made $1,400 in about 45 minutes, right? This is what we call high leverage, which comes with having a good skill set. Okay. So if you think about doctors, right, they're paid a lot of money. but typically it doesn't take them a whole ton of time to do what they do, right? If you think about a surgeon, there are surgeons that do hip surgery, for example, and that surgery takes them 2 hours. Okay, they're going to make $20,000 or $30,000 for that. Not because it took them a long time, but because of the skill set that they have, right? Because of the time they put into developing that skill set, right? You're paid in proportion to the problems you solve, not the time you put in, right? Unless you're an employee. This is how we escape that. This is exactly how I'm making roughly $1,500 to $2,000, if not more, per day right now. Absolutely not working 8 hours a day. Working from home, from the computer, talking to other humans over Zoom, loving what I do, meeting cool people, having the opportunity to sell an amazing product or service, learn, talk to very cool people, and make good money. That changes my life. If you want to learn more about how exactly I do this, I do help people break into the space. I do offer coaching in this, full transparency. This is not, to feed you into that. This is just to help people sort of realize what's possible and see how this space actually works, because the term high ticket sales is thrown around everywhere. This is exactly, how it works step by step. If you want this infographic or you want to, just set up a time to talk to me about, my experience in the space, how I've gotten to the tops of the space, schedule a call, go to my website, check it out a little bit. Hopefully you found this valuable. Yeah, see you next time.